Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I projected around 2:30. I'll get a start time normally, 15 minutes. That's pretty good. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. First off, I know I always send this out to a select few, most of the family and friends. Much later that you go up and show up. Thank you for that. Today, I want to introduce myself. I have to, even though you already know me. My name is Malik Adisa-Ajene, and this is on tape. Nobody will be taped today, it's only myself. This is for my thesis, and as of next week, I will be completing my assignments and in preparation for graduation for the American College of Holistic Healthcare Sciences, which is located out in Portland, Oregon. I've been studying holistic and naturopathic medicine for the last 4 years at that institution. And I've been doing studies, lectures, and consultations on my own for the last 15 to 17 years. So once again, I thank everybody for coming. And today I'm going to be speaking on diabetes. The reason why I'm speaking on diabetes is because of the prevalence not only in our community, but also the prevalence within my family, my immediate family. Diabetes is an interesting disease. There's two forms of diabetes that as documented in the American Medical Journal. One is type 1, and the other is type 2. And I'll get into both of those today, but primarily my lecture is going to be on type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is an altogether different animal. So let's move forward. My company or my practice name is Spiritual Pathways Holistic Healing, and this is a sponsored event by Spiritual Pathways Holistic Healing. Diabetes, a closer look. What is it and what to do about it? Okay. Worldwide diabetes has reached pandemic proportions. Data published in December 2006 in the International Diabetes Federation, which is a journal that they keep statistics of in diabetes. The atlas showed that the disease has affected a staggering 246 million people worldwide, with 46% of those affected in the ages of 40 to 59 years. It was projected at that time that in 20 years, those numbers were expected to increase 380 people worldwide. These are old statistics. However, these are new statistics. In November 2011, which was 5 years after they did that previous study, the original projection, 5 years after the original projection, the IDF released the 5th edition of the Diabetes Atlas, and the new figures indicate that the number of people living with diabetes increased from 246 million in 2006 to 366 million in 2011. That was an average of 24 million people per year. He then went on to state that if this continued, this pandemic, if unchecked, would eventually reach 552 million people by the year 2030. So they did coin this correctly. This is not only an epidemic, this has become a pandemic. Pandemic means that it has increased beyond the center and expanded in different areas and locations throughout the world. And as I said, this sharp increase is equal to an estimated 3 new cases every 10 seconds, or approximately 10 million new cases per year. So every time we look at our watch and count, 1, 2, 3, there's 3 new cases of diabetes being diagnosed. That's just the diagnosis. There are other people who are walking around with diabetes who don't even know it. Okay, what is it? I have this. I put together this slide presentation. Quite some time. My wife and I had to put it together and edit it this morning. I was still up here editing around 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. According to the American Diabetes Association, Diabetes or diabetes mellitus is a group of diseases characterized by high blood glucose levels that result from a defect in the body's ability to produce and or use insulin. That is the official medical definition of what diabetes is. I like to get different definitions from a group of sources. So I went to Wikipedia. If anyone's familiar with Wikipedia, that's the online dictionary. It's a free dictionary they try to keep the database pretty much up to date. So I went to Wikipedia, and it said diabetes is referred to as a group of metabolic diseases in which a person has high blood sugar, either because the body does not produce enough insulin or because cells do not respond to the insulin that is produced. This high blood sugar produces the classic symptoms of polyuria, which is frequent urination, polydipsia, which is increased thirst, and polyphagia, which is increased hunger. Anyone who's familiar, anyone who has the disease itself, they know that, especially when it first begins to attack the body, one of the symptoms that they get is that they have to go to the bathroom quite frequently. And other than the diagnosis itself, people often wonder, why is it that I'm having to go to the bathroom so much? Come to find out that when they do go get their blood sugar checked, it's showing that they are showing symptoms of diabetes. Increased hunger is one, and increased thirst is another. The thirst is because the body is trying to eliminate the toxins through the urine. Urine is filtered through the kidneys, and once the kidneys does what it's designed to do, it pushes all the toxins out through the urine. And when you have to go through these frequently urinations, the body gets to the point where it starts to become thirsty, so it calls for thirst. And you're doing a process of drinking water, urinating, drinking water, urinating, so you never catch up, and increase hunger. For the National Institute of Health and Metabolic Diseases, described as an abnormal chemical reaction in your body which disrupts your body's ability to break down proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and turn them into sugars and acids to fuel your body. When we go through the process of eating food, we primarily eat food for nutrition. And the chemical process that takes place when we ingest food into our body is that the cells or the intelligent process of the body takes that food once it's been broken down into the intestines, and it starts to extract the nutrients out of the food that we ate. The three items, so to say, or the three nutrients, so to speak, that the body is trying to process are the protein, carbohydrates, and the fats. And there's one more that the body processes, which is liquid. Okay, so once you digest your food, the intelligence of the body is going through the process of extracting nutrients out of the food that we ate, and is taking the carbohydrates, the fats, and the proteins, and they're turning into sugars and acids. The acids that they're turning into is the essential amino acids, which is what's the building block of every cell. The essential amino acids is what makes up protein. And of course, the sugar is glucose. The body cannot live without sugar. Can't live without glucose. As a matter of fact, the organ that has the greatest need for sugar is the brain. And when we go through a process of starting to starve ourselves from sugar, the first thing that we get, or even one of the symptoms of diabetes, when they start to get low in sugar, what they call hypoglycemia, they start to get hallucination, or they get lightheaded. That's because the brain is being starved of sugar. It needs the sugar. So we can't do without it, but there are specific types of sugars that our body that it needs to process. NIH continues, metabolic disease can develop when one or multiple organs which are a part of the digestive system, especially the liver or the pancreas, begins to function abnormally. So those two organs, the liver and the pancreas, are critical in terms of being able to maintain homeostasis, which is the term that is used to maintain body functions or balance, body balance. Those two organs right there, the liver and the pancreas, are critical in terms of digestion. And they go through a process that is so refined that the smallest interruption in its function can offset our body to the point where we feel it in the sense of illness or disease. As a matter of fact, the liver itself has to perform at least 500 different functions a day. So the liver is such a vital organ for our survival that it is imperative or pertinent that we keep it as clean as possible or as healthy as possible. Okay, and what I just described to you, that is the function of what happens when we eat food. Let's see if I can get this. That's cool, I got this today. Okay, all right, so we eat the food. There's your carbohydrates, turns into glucose. Glucose goes through our intestines out into our bloodstream. There's the pancreas. The pancreas increases or secretes the hormones, including insulin, to be able to break down and process what we ate. It gets filtered out into the liver. Some of the extra glucose that we process from the food gets stored in the liver as well. Then once it gets processed even further, it goes out into our adipose tissue, which is fat tissue and muscles. Okay. Now, diabetes. The two most well-known forms of diabetes are type 1 or insulin-dependent diabetes. Type 1 diabetes was once called juvenile diabetes because it was usually found in young children. Type 1 diabetes is characterized by the complete or partial destruction of the insulin-producing beta cells in the pancreas. The absence of insulin results in the body's inability to either metabolize or properly store sugar. Beta cells are the tiny little cells that exist in the pancreas, and they are responsible for producing the insulin. In type 1 diabetes, either through a virus or autoimmune disease, the beta cells within that area of the pancreas get destroyed. That's the reason why people with type 1 diabetes can no longer produce insulin. Type 2 diabetes or non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus was once called adult onset diabetes because this form of the disease was diagnosed only in adults or teens. Recently, as early as 2000, or as recently as the year 2000, they started doing studies, and they found that children who were in the age of 5 years, as young as 5 years old, were coming up with type 2 diabetes. This is some scary stuff. Unlike type 1 diabetes, non-insulin dependent diabetics have the ability to produce insulin through the beta cells of the pancreas. However, due to the high amounts of sugar in the blood and cells, the insulin that the pancreas produces is insufficient. What that means is that because we have so much sugar in our blood, or the diabetics, type 2 diabetics have so much sugar in the blood, the body gets to the point where it starts to shut down the receptor cells that sit out on the receptor cells, or receptors that sit on the outside of the cells. It communicates with the food that we eat through a chemical process, and it lets the body know when to allow in glucose and when not to allow in glucose. This is referred to insulin resistance because the insulin receptors that sit on the outer wall of the cell stop responding to the insulin molecule, and therefore the sugar remains in the blood and never gets exported into the cells. Remember, as I said, all the cells in our body have to use sugar. That's what our energy comes from. And that's exactly what it looks like. Normal metabolism is, you see the glucose coming into the insulin receptor. The insulin receptor is still on the outside of the cell wall there. And it allows, once the insulin and glucose match up, the insulin escorts the glucose into the cell, and that's how we produce basically the insulin receptors that sit on the outside of the cell wall said, look, I ain't happy. You've overloaded me, I cannot process the sugar anymore, so I'm not letting you back, I'm not letting you inside of the cell so that, because too much of that sugar inside the cell will damage and kill the cells too. So you got all this sugar floating around in your bloodstream. Of all the persons diagnosed with diabetes, an overwhelming amount